Okay, theme song in three, two. And welcome back to Late Night Lately, the late night show. It's a podcast for the website cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. Hey, this is episode 78. I've got a monologue for you. Here we go. Let's get into it. Zohran Mamdani won the election to be New York's next mayor, defeating Andrew Cuomo and G.I. Joe villain Curtis Sliwa, who was quoted as saying to the heavens, "Curse you, Zohran! I'll defeat you yet." I wish I had a picture of Curtis Sliwa's hat so that you know what I'm talking about. The FAA will reduce air traffic by 10% at many airports to maintain safety, and much like how it is on the New York subway train, Spirit Airlines said it was going to start offering standing room only. And then there's a picture of the chairs. Let's take it away. So stupid. I ruined all my jokes. After 39 years in Congress, Nancy Pelosi said she plans to retire in 2027, making her the hottest MILF in Congress. This week, Japan deployed the military to counter a surge in bear attacks. First, it was the honey, then it was the picnic baskets. This is exactly what happens when we're so lax on anthropomorphic animals. And finally, Warner Brothers announced the studio is currently working on a third Gremlins movie. Unfortunately, they're going to have to recast Gizmo because he's pretty busy right now. It's JD Vance if you're listening to the audio-only version. All right, that's all the jokes I have for you today. Let's get on with the show. This week in late night, it has been pretty busy. As I keep mentioning, that we are hurtling towards Oscar season. The Grammys nominations were just announced, so we will see people essentially more or less promoting themselves when it comes to that later this winter. And this happens every single year. We are in that state of mind. For the Tonight Show, and keep that in mind because there were a lot of people that appeared on late night shows this week. Yeah, there were a lot of people that appeared this week. For the Tonight Show, Jimmy had the very exclusive job of announcing people's sexiest man alive, and it was Jonathan Bailey, which seems like a win. You know, he's a queer man, so it's great, and it fits in with the theme of Wicked. And then I saw a press release today from NBC talking about how there's going to be for the Tonight Show, the week of the release of Wicked for Good, there's going to be basically Wicked themed things and guests appearing on the Tonight Show. And I just went, maybe a little bit of collusion. The day after they aired the Wicked primetime concert special on NBC. Additionally, the winner of the On Brand with Jimmy Fallon, that competition show that he hosted with, I can't pull the woman's name, but you know what? More power to them. I don't care anymore. I'm not mad at anything Jimmy Fallon does. A lot of people are. Don't know why. Get a life. But she was on there. Her name is Bianca Fernandez. She's very attractive. Turns out she's like fucking 18. Jimmy Carr also appeared. Rami Malek was there. Rachel Sennett, Julius Randle, Nick Murphy did some stand-up. Jennifer Lawrence was there for a little bit. Tom Felton. Daniel Caesar performed. Sarah Snook. Mikey Day. Kyle Larson. And also Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi. And Young Miko performed. It just seems like it was a week for guests that I don't really care for, except for Mikey Day and Rami Malek. I guess I like Jennifer Lawrence. She's fine. Oh, and I'm With Her also performed. I skipped over that for some reason. And then on, what's it called? Late Night with Seth Meyers. He had a very funny week, as always. You know, I love that Seth Meyers. Nikki Glazer was there. Matthew McFadden, continuing off of the Succession trip with Sarah Snook. I'm saying Snook because when I just finished watching the Tonight Show, or last night's episode of Tonight Show, and Steve Higgins, the announcer and a producer of SNL, said Snook. So I said, I thought that's how you pronounce it. It's like Gal Gadot. I think she says Gadot, and everybody else has been saying Godot, like waiting for Godot. There's so many. Steve Buscemi, I believe his family, if you just heard me zip something up, I'm wearing a pair of Lululemon shorts that has there's a zipper for this key pocket. I noticed it was down, so I've been trying to zip it back up. Steve Buscemi says Buscemi. That's apparently how you're supposed to say it. Who else? Who has names that you're supposed to say differently? I don't know. Tim Robinson and Zach Cannon were there. Stavros Halkias was there. Alex Rodriguez, Dakota Fanning, Joachim Trier, Kristen Milotti, and Tiffany Haddish. You know what's really interesting about Stavros is he's a very popular figure, very funny comedian. I do like him, and I knew who he was after his big podcast with his friends ended. The show is called Come Town, and Seth Meyers was very eager to say Come Town on television. And, you know, in fact, earlier that day, I read a New York Times profile of Stavros that was posted, I think, 2 weeks ago, and it was just sitting in my saved section, and I was getting through all of my saved articles, and I read that, and the author of the article, of the profile, wrote Come Town multiple times, and I just went, in the New York Times? This is what I pay for. Along with all the closer looks, we also got a Ya Burnt. And I love Ya Burnt. I think Ya Burnt's so funny. I think Ya Burnt is so, so funny. You know what I miss? And they will never do this again, but the popsicle shticks. It's no longer on YouTube. You have to find like secondary uploads, or third-party uploads rather, on YouTube. It's because it has a lot of licensed music, but popsicle shtick is set, and this is very early on Late Night with Seth Meyers. Seth would read basically a popsicle. You know, when you eat a popsicle, they have like jokes on them. You basically read a popsicle style joke, and then it would be followed with between 20 seconds and a minute's worth of poorly done, maybe haphazardly. I don't want to say poorly done. Haphazardly done animation featuring popsicle sticks, doing their own puns, doing their own jokes, and performing copywritten songs. And it's so funny. It is so funny, and they'll never bring it back. Additionally, I was also I was just in a mood. Well, I was looking through. This is neither here nor there. I have a lot of playlists on YouTube Music. I have a lot of playlists on YouTube. Unfortunately, because they're under the same account, and I understand I don't have to use the same account, but I choose to. They're under the same account. No matter what happens, you get YouTube playlists on YouTube Music, and you get YouTube Music playlists on YouTube. So if I follow Taskmaster's playlist and there's one video that has music in it, boy oh boy, it appears on YouTube Music, and it sucks. Anyway, I have a talk show playlist that I have like a bunch of videos saved to, and you know, videos get deleted and all that stuff, but I was looking at just old late night stuff. There's a lot of late night with Seth Meyers videos. Like they don't do sketches anymore on Late Night with Seth Meyers, but they played so well. But they probably don't do it because it costs money. Even just to shoot that stuff during the day probably costs money and time, when people could just write some jokes and then get out of there. All right, Jimmy Kimmel. Oh yeah, let's do Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel Live. Jimmy had a week that started out with the LA Dodgers team, like 5 of the guys popping up on the show. Elle Fanning, Sean Hayes, Kalani performed. Elizabeth Olsen was there. Josh Brolin, Guillermo del Toro, Lucius performed. Carol Burnett was also able to sit down. This is my issue with these late night audiences, and I'll say this about the Late Show with Stephen Colbert in a second as well. These people do not really appreciate who Kimmel's people were able to book. Carol Burnett is such a treasure, such a gem. She's a real talent. And these people just are like, they're enjoying their time, sure, but they're not really just appreciating that they have one of the greatest comedic actors sitting on that couch, just right there in front of them. I would be captivated. Ugh. Then go over to Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He had Patti Smith on. If Patti Smith is on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert and Robert Plant, I mean, yes, they're for Robert Plant, at least at this point in time, his both parts of his interview are at 694,000 views and 171,000 views. And I'm sure Patti Smith is going to grow even more. But man, those two people, those two musicians, oh my goodness, just sitting on that couch, I would skip over the, I would just politely sit there and listen to their stories. Tom Hanks stopped by for an entire episode. Mavis Staples performed. The Tiffany Haddish was there. Gary Cole was there. There was a Meanwhile segment. Guillermo del Toro did some type of sketch. I'm not a huge Guillermo del... What? Oh my gosh. Don't. I was listening to Yacht Rock Deep Cuts on Sirius XM and it just started playing. It just started playing out of nowhere. And yes, I subscribe to Sirius XM. Sydney Sweeney. And then there was a segment called The Late Show CSI. You can tell that I did not watch Colbert's Late Show last night. I watched the monologue after. Here's the thing. I was getting through the episodes, and I watched getting through the episodes from last night for today, and I watched like half the monologue, but I just can't. This is an issue. Now I'll say something negative about Kimmel and Colbert. I say it all the time. This is an issue that I have with these shows, is that it's just too much applause. Too many applause breaks for softball jokes. It's just so I could only get through half of the monologue today, and then I had to watch the Patti Smith interview online. Speaking of watching things online, I have YouTube TV. They're currently in the middle of a carriage dispute with Disney. And in fact, the only update as of right now, this point in time, I've received, not I have received, but that has been announced, is that YouTube has slammed Disney for quote unquote leaking documents. And Disney's been going to their workers going, just stay with us, blah, blah, blah. All right, on Last Week Tonight, John Oliver talked about police chases, and for The Daily Show, I should have done that in reverse, Jon Stewart spoke to Joe Manchin. Jordan Klepper hosted for the week, and he spoke to Sanam Marin, Scott Galloway, and Ethan Hawke, and he did... Grace Kludenschmidt went out and did a bit with tourists in Times Square, which I think is where the Daily Show studio is now. And there was also a Sports War segment, and Desi Leidick did a thing about Trump in New York. A segment about Trump in New York. All right, that's This Week in Late Night. Okay. Last week, there was earlier this week, we got the news that this comes from Variety, and it's written by Brian Steinberg. Jon Stewart is renewing and staying at The Daily Show for at least another year, and I believe the following day, we also received news that everybody else signed on and is staying on for another day, or for another year. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting prospect to have, barring that Jon Stewart was the host previously. It's very interesting to have somebody host one day and then there be a rotating sanctuary of hosts every week. It's kind of like when Carson was towards the end of his tenure with The Tonight Show. He had essentially a guest host every Monday, and then he hosted, or like one day a week. I don't know. I think it was Monday, and then he hosted the rest of the week. I think that's it. We've had one end of that, and now we have the other end, and it's fascinating, and it seems to be working for the Daily Show, at least in terms of ratings, especially when it comes to being online. I wonder with the clips being online now. I wonder though, where does that put the Daily Show? Because yes, the show can last for another year, but we see how Colbert has, like, his show was canceled, and they talk about that. I'm sorry, I just typed something in, and I completely realized that it needs to go on the show. I'm so stinking gosh darn mad. Now, anyway, Jon Stewart staying through December 2026. He also, Jon Stewart, had a conversation with the New Yorker's David Remnick, and it's an interview you can sit down and watch. It's an interview you can sit down and read. But in it, they essentially talked about what's happening in politics right now with this giant divide between the Democrats and the Republicans. And Jon Stewart does his thing and he plays both sides. People refuse to say that he does that, but he does that. He plays both sides and says both sides are bad. And then they also talk about the things that happened to Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, in that the FCC seemingly has cracked down on freedom of speech. It's an interview where you more or less know where it's heading, and that's fine. That's not a knock to the show or to them at any point. I think it's fascinating to see Jon in his element, but not in a place where he should feel comfortable, which is great, because that's something that I am not entirely. That's something that has like kind of turned me off of him, because he is somebody that is let me hide behind the desk and stand up for what I believe in. Okay. Sorry, I'm also trying to pull out this Stephen Colbert interview, which is unfortunate that I literally just remembered at the last second. What in the world is going on? Copy. Okay. Now, I talked about Stewart and Remnick talked about freedom of speech and censorship and things of that along the lines of that for political comedy. And besides the cynicism and Stewart being that person that he is, the cynical person that he is, he also wages for hope among the world and the populace, which is great, but I don't know if this is going to be something that can be forgotten. All the things that are happening right now in the world, or is that something that we can get past? Because he does mention, people like Joe Rogan who are on the right saying that the left needs to fight better. In some aspects, I hate to say, I don't want to be cliche when I say the words, I hate to say this, but Joe Rogan is a little bit correct. There needs to stop being this passivity passivity, yes, when it comes to it. Now, the Colbert interview, which comes from GQ, written by Zach Barron, I'm on a website. I'm on GQ, sort of. I had to get past the paywall, so I won't be showing it. Stephen Colbert on the End of the Late Show is written by Zach Barron. It's an exit interview of sorts. I think we're a little early on this, but given that this is Colbert's final fall with the show, then sure. Colbert talks about what the positive aspect of losing this show is going to have on him and his psyche, saying that he's thankful for the show and that he's able to not have to work in political comedy for so long. Zach asks, "You've been attaching your mouth to the exhaust pipe of news for, I don't know." And then Colbert's like, "That sounds vaguely suicidal." But he goes, "Yeah, I'm getting a little woozy. Like, listen, it's possible that George Cheeks, who was then at that point in time, was the co-CEO of Paramount and the president and CEO of CBS, saved my life. I'll get a little oxygen back in my brain. I love what I do and I love the grind. You can only do one of those shows, do the jokes every night, year after year for 20 years. If you give a damn at all about what you're talking about." And I do, but there's a sense of relief that I might not have to put on the snorkel and get into the sewer every single day. And Zach points out that, there can be coping mechanisms when you interact with the world relentlessly, and they go on and have a conversation about Colbert's evolution and everything, and hopefulness despite political cynicism, and much in the same way that Stewart, I'm sure that they have conversations regarding that stuff. Also, it was in this interview. This is a piece of news that obviously, if you know Stephen Colbert from any real conversation he's had, then you know, and that is all of the Late Show, then you know that he is a man of faith, and he says that people would probably be surprised. Hold on, let me get the exact quote because I don't want to butcher this. He says, and the demographics of the shows are interesting too. It's about a third. It's about a third Republicans, a third Democrats, and a third independents. People perceive me as this sort of lefty figure. I think I'm more conservative than people think. I just happen to be talking about a government in extremis. And so what I'm giving you is my reaction video to that day. And which is true. Like I think people come to these late night shows, and this is a part in the reason, the issue I have with audiences at any late night show, at shows like Saturday Night Live, at shows like Seth Meyers, at shows like Fallon, at shows like Colbert's. People glom themselves onto who they feel more relatable towards, and I'm sure that happens with fans of Gutfeld as well. These people, for some reason, they can't get up from their couches and they leave Gutfeld on. They leave Fox News on, and Gutfeld's on at 10 p.m. and they watch it, and whether they like him or not, they agree with him, and that's all that matters. It's again, you don't have to agree with everything. I don't know if I said that, but you don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to enjoy everything. I still watch The Daily Show, even though I think Jon Stewart's kind of a pompous tool. I still watch Jimmy Kimmel Live, even though I don't know if he hires people of color besides Guillermo. Same thing with Stephen Colbert. The reason I say that is because when you feature so much of your workplace, or when you win an award and you invite people up on stage and there's no colored person, come on, then that's an issue. And this is why I urge people to get news from many sources and don't watch late night shows for news. So often do you read on the internet, I only get my news from The Daily Show. I only get my news from Colbert. That's such a stupid way to look at things. And then to assume that you agree with everything that person thinks. Sure, Jimmy Kimmel is a Democrat, but he's also rich. He probably does not agree with a lot of stuff that you agree with, just because he wants better health care because he's gone through problems involving his son when his son was younger, Billy, or he believes in women's rights. It doesn't mean he agrees on other stuff. Get your news from multiple sources. Anyway, they also talk about the Colbert Show, and they discuss not just the show itself, but the character of Stephen Colbert on that show, which I know this is a very blanket statement, but I think when Colbert took over the Late Show, people were expecting him to be more like Stephen Colbert on the Colbert Report, when in fact he's not. Anyway, they're both great at interviews. Read through the Stephen Colbert one. I did not watch the video on that. There is an accompanying video. I assume it's the same thing. And then on the opposite end, David Remnick's conversation with Jon Stewart is twice as long, but it's a little bit more digestible when you watch it. So go to the New Yorker or go to the New Yorker's YouTube channel and watch it, or read it. Doesn't matter. But they're both written and they're both watchable. So there's that. All right. Listen, if you like what you heard here, head to the website, cpluscomedy.com, where you can see pretty much everything I've ever done. If you want to see a video version of this show, go to youtube.com/cpluscomedy, where you can see a video version of the other shows, LinkedIn Logs, which is a jobs podcast, and The Constitutionals, which is the entertainment business news podcast. You can also check out the interviews where I sit down and talk to B-list and C-list and sometimes A-list celebrities about their projects. Subscribe to those shows wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok @C+Comedy. Me on those platforms @ChadBlackWhite. See you next time. Bye.